Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jeremy Leffler, and I work in the policy office at the National Science Foundation. And it's my pleasure to welcome you today to the NSF Fall 2021 Virtual Grants Conference. I'm now pleased to present this session covering the Directorate for Biological Sciences. This session will be presented by Kathryn Dickson, a program officer in the Division of Integrative Organismal Systems.
Thank you for that introduction, and I'm happy to be here today to talk to you about programs within the Directorate for Biological Sciences. I am Kathy Dickson. I am a program director in the Directorate for Biological Sciences in the Division of Integrative Organismal Systems. Next slide. Today, we are going to provide an overview of the Biology Directorate and specific programs within biology that you might be interested in, a little bit about proposals and funding, and then how to reach us. We will end with a question and answer period where you will be able to ask specific questions and hopefully get them addressed, or we can refer you to someone who will be able to address the questions. So we will start with an overview of biology. Next slide. The Directorate for Biological Sciences' main mission is to enable discoveries for understanding life and to advance the frontiers of biological knowledge. And the Directorate is very diverse. The next slide, please. We have 4 divisions in biology that cover all of the different levels of organization, from molecular and cellular biology up to the biosphere. And the divisions are primarily focused in different areas, but there is overlap, as you can see here. So the Molecular and Cellular Biosciences Division covers topics from molecules up to cells and tissues. The Integrative Organismal Systems program is focused on questions that are affecting organisms as a unit of biological organization, but spans from the molecules and genetic information up to populations. Environmental Biology Division is covering population and community ecology up to ecosystems and biosphere level questions and projects. And then in biology, we also have a Division of Biological Infrastructure, which is a little bit unusual for a directorate, but this is very important in biology to support resources, both personnel, human resources, tools, centers, and other types of resources like bioinformatics. The next slide will show us the biology priorities for fiscal year 2022. And these align with the Biden administration's priorities as well. So we were responding to that information. And these priorities will no doubt carry forward beyond 2022 as well. So the first of these is emerging infectious diseases. And because of COVID, you can imagine why this is very important. And NSF as well as NIH play important roles in this important priority. The next is life on a warming planet and climate change, biotechnology to advance the bioeconomy, and we also focus on integration across the biological sciences, and this will come up again in a bit. And one of the other major priorities is broadening participation across all areas that we are involved with, and many of the broadening participation projects and programs involve education. So in addition to supporting research, we also support a lot of education and participation of junior scientists and scientists across all levels in research. The next slide, please. This is we're now going to move into the specifics of the bioscience programs, the core programs in each of the divisions. So the next slide shows us the first of these. We'll talk about molecular and cellular biosciences, or MCB. And this NSF 21-509, that's the associated solicitation or call for proposals, and these numbers will show up and they have links to them to the solicitation page. So in the core programs in molecular and cellular biosciences, the 4 are cellular dynamics and function. So this is mostly the cell biology projects, molecular biophysics, genetic mechanisms, and systems and synthetic biology. And this covers the span of this particular division. Then they also have special programs and tracks within the core programs. So there's a fairly new program called Transitions to Excellence in MCB research. This is for faculty at transitions between associate and full professor, for example, and transitioning in their research programs to apply to get funding to take and advance in their research. There's some new programs in synthetic biology, designing synthetic cells beyond the bounds of evolution. There's also a plant synthetic biology program that crosses between molecular cellular biosciences and integrative organismal systems. And then semiconductor synthetic biology, as well as RECODE, which is actually a program that involves engineering and bio. Next slide, please. Our next division is integrative organismal systems, which is a more complex division. We have 15 programs actually within integrative organismal systems, and they're organized to some extent in clusters: the developmental systems cluster, behavioral systems, neural systems, physiological and structural systems, which is the cluster that I am involved most directly with, the plant genome research program, and the EDGE program, or enabling discovery through genomics, which we will talk about a bit more in a minute. And under these clusters, the first 4 clusters, we have specific programs in these different areas that are noted here. And when you apply for proposals, when you submit proposals, you want to identify a program that's the best fit for your proposal. And we will talk about this again a little bit. So iOS also has some special tracks and DCLs, which are Dear Colleague letters, which are bulletins that we put out that pinpoint specific areas that we are interested in receiving proposals on within the core program. So here appears the plant synthetic biology program, as I mentioned previously. That's a Dear Colleague letter. Most of those go to the plant genome research program, and they have a special program for plant synthetic biology with MCB, as I mentioned. We're also involved in the RECODE program, reproducible cells and organoids. And we also have 2 DCLs on functional genomics and organisms in a dynamic environment, which would come to this division. Our next division, next slide, is the Division of Environmental Biology. And they too have 4 clusters like MCB: the population and community ecology, ecosystem sciences, evolutionary processes, and systematics and biodiversity science. And you can see these span those areas I mentioned earlier, from populations up to the biosphere. And DEB has several special programs and tracks that are listed here. One we will talk about in a minute: ecology and evolution of infectious diseases. And of course, that aligns with one of the priorities that I've already mentioned. They also support long-term ecological and environmental biology research, which is very important, and macrosystems biology and neon-enabled science, which is a large-scale program in neon we will talk about in 1 minute. And then they also have a special program, Opportunities for Promoting Understanding Through Systematics, or OPUS, which is a synthetic sort of ability to support PIs, principal investigators, who want to synthesize research and then look towards what the next steps are and help develop those next steps to fill a gap. Okay, the next slide, please. We now come to our 4th division, the Division of Biological Infrastructure. And their core programs are organized into 3 groups: human resources. So this includes support for undergraduate, graduate, and postdoctoral programs that we have within biology, as well as research experiences for teachers. Sites program, which is a new program that we're just undergoing the reviews, the first set of the reviews for that program. Then there are research resources. So the Division of Biological Infrastructure supports important infrastructure at institutions that can help increase the capacity for biological research, that help develop new resources, and that sustain some of this infrastructure. We also have major research instrumentation program within biology. And then when we move over to the centers and other mid to large scale infrastructure, the bottom program is mid-scale research infrastructure 1 and 2, which are NSF-wide programs, but we have specific biology proposals that are funded within that program. They also fund centers, and the Division of Biological Infrastructure is also involved in the National Ecological Observatory Network, or NEON. And so the next slide tells us a little bit more about NEON, which is a major investment that the Biology Directorate has made into these ecological observatory networks that are basically on land. There are other networks, one of which is supported by the Geo Directorate, for example, that is observatories for oceans and freshwater bodies. But in bio, we are focused on this series of 81 field sites and 20 regional observatories, which are shown in the dots here. And these collect a wide range of biological and other environmental data, and then all of that data is made available to the community, and it serves as an excellent resource for studies such as those involving climate change. So you can get a more global perspective, a continental-wide perspective on some of these data. But it also is a really important resource that faculty can use in their teaching. The next slide, please. Okay. So for most of these core programs that have just been mentioned and reviewed in the Biology Directorate, most of them do not have deadlines. Some do, and in the next few slides, I'm going to talk about some programs that do have deadlines, and that's pointed out. The best way to figure out whether there's a deadline or not is to look at the solicitation for the given program. And so our guidance on submitting your proposals to our core programs without deadlines is work on it, get some feedback from others, and submit it as soon as it's ready. There's no limits in biology on the number of submissions that you can provide to the core programs as a PI or co-PI. But a caveat to this is that some special solicitations may have limits. So we're talking about our core programs right now, the ones I just reviewed. Collaborative proposals are welcome, and collaboratives are proposals that involve more than one institution and are important. So you describe in the proposal how the different individuals involved and the different institutions involved come together with complementary expertise to move this project forward. The review of our core proposals usually is a combination of ad hoc or external reviews and panel reviews. So ad hoc reviews, we send proposals out to individuals who are expert in the field to provide feedback. And then panel reviews is a group of individuals that have expertise across that represent expertise that crosses over a large swath of the area represented by all the proposals that are going to be reviewed at the panel. So we have more generalists sometimes in these panels, and you want to be sure that you write your proposals to address both audiences. We have multiple panels per year. There's no set schedule for them. When we get enough proposals, we will convene a panel and review those proposals. And this is also dependent upon the NSF commitment to provide feedback to PIs on proposals within approximately 6 months of submission. Okay, the next slide, please. So we're still on our second topic, bioscience programs. Now I want to talk about some other programs that involve biology, some of which are larger than just the directorate. So these are cross-cutting programs within the biology directorate and multi-directorate or even interagency programs that involve other federal agencies and even international partners with biology. Many of these programs may be of interest to you, so I wanted to highlight a few of them. So the next slide, please. Okay. So biology has, in the past 5 years or so, been cognizant of and pushing for more integration across biology to get people out of silos and focus on questions that involve people in different areas bringing their expertise together. And so we have 2 programs currently in bio, which cross bio, the Biology Integration Institutes, which are fairly large scale programs. There's the solicitation, and these do have a deadline. The next one is January 12th, 2022. And this supports collaborative teams of at least 3 different individuals and span multiple disciplines across biology. They can involve others outside of biology, but they have to also span sub areas of biology. And these are $12.5 million across 5 years. And they also have a very important educational training component to train the next generation of integrative biologists. We have another program, Integrative Research in Biology, which is smaller budgets than BII, but these also require integrative approaches and tools across biology subdisciplines and scales of organization. Again, this program has a deadline. January 25th, 2022 is the next one. Okay, the next slide, please. Here is one of the examples of an interagency program that involves NSF with USDA NIFA, plant biotic interactions. And this is actually a core program within the Integrative Organismal Systems Division of Biology, yet it's still an interagency program and expands beyond NSF. And this is to support the study of both beneficial and antagonistic interactions between plants and viral and or biotic symbionts, pathogens, and pests. And it pulls together both basic research supported by NSF and applied agricultural research that USDA is interested in. And the systems studied can be model systems, they can be agricultural, crop plants, or non-model organizations. So it's very broad. And the proposals may be fundamental or translational or both. And then depending on this and the way the proposals are reviewed, the funding may be directly from NSF. It could be from USDA, or it could be co-funding from both agencies. It depends on how the project fits the different missions of these agencies. The proposals are reviewed by a panel that involves program officers from both agencies. So it's a good cooperative relationship to fill a need in this area of plant biotic interactions. Next slide, please. Another interagency and actual international program is Signals in the Soil. And this one, the solicitation is currently under revision, so we don't know when the next deadline is. But if you're interested in this, there should be a new solicitation coming out at some point. And you can look at the previous solicitation, 20-548, to see what types of research is supported by this Signals in the Soil program. You can see the NSF awards to see what was funded in the past rounds of competition. And the key themes are to generate novel sensors for conditions within the soil for various purposes. And it, of course, involves cyber systems and data analytics to take the data and process it and make it available so that the biological purposes, understanding biology, soil interactions, is achieved. Okay, the next slide, please. Another interagency and international program that we have is Ecology and Evolution of Infectious Diseases, or EEID. And this involves NSF, National Institutes of Health, USDA, as well as 3 other countries, the UK, Israel, and China. So this is a very broad program. But of course, this is what's needed to address the questions that this program is focused on, which is the ecological, evolutionary, organismal, and social drivers that influence the transmission dynamics of infectious diseases. So this is an important topic, obviously, in the current situation, and also requires international and cross-agency cooperation. So it's good that NSF is nimble enough to be able to develop these kinds of programs to address really important questions and problems that the world and the US face. Okay, the next slide is another interagency program, which involves NSF and NIH, which is Enabling Discovery Through Genomics, or EDGE. And this program has undergone changes over the last several years since it was first begun within bio. Now has a partner with NIH, NHGRI, the Human Genome Research Institute. And starting this year, there's going to be a deadline, which is in February of 2022. And this is to focus on non-model organisms of any type to do genomic, genotype, environment interactions. And it can be proposals to develop tools to look at the genetics and genomics of these organisms, but also it's funding hypothesis-driven research into the mechanisms underlying complex traits that would depend upon this genomic resources. And again, you can look at the NSF website and award searches to find what types of projects have been funded through this program if you're interested in developing a proposal to EDGE. Next slide, please. Okay, and this, I've been talking about some of the NSF NIH cooperative interagency programs, but if you go back to our core programs and programs that don't formally have interactions with other agencies, I need to remind people about the biology directorate and the distinction we have between NSF's mission, which is to support basic fundamental research, and the NIH mission for biomedical research. So this often comes up as a question from principal investigators: where does my research fit? So as long as your research is focused on a basic biological question and not disease-related goals or biomedically motivated questions, then it may be suitable for one of the core programs in biology. So this disease-related goals or testing drugs or looking at animal models of disease is really the purview of NIH and not NSF. And we may advise you to not submit a proposal to NSF if it falls into this category, because we would have to return it without review. But there is in engineering, there's bioengineering. As long as there are projects that advance engineering knowledge, bioengineering does support some projects that have diagnosis or treatment related goals, or that develop equipment or tools that will help persons with disabilities. So the engineering directorate does fund some biomedical research in this area in engineering, but biology does not. And this information is in our NSF proposal and award policies and procedures guide, which is available online. And this is something that you should discuss with a program officer. How does your research fit a given area. Okay, the next slide, please. So now I want to talk about a couple other programs, most of which are cross NSF, that we support and a lot of biologists may be interested in. So one of these is the Research at Primarily Undergraduate Institutions program, or RUI program. And I want to point out two things about this. So if you are a faculty member at a primarily undergraduate institution, you can submit to our core programs under the core program, as well as use the designation RUI. And that allows you a RUI impact statement, which helps explain how you're going to involve undergraduate students in your research and how the research is going to help advance or strengthen the research environment at your institution. So this is one way that NSF supports undergraduate training, which is one of our really important goals. And you would want to talk to a program officer about this if you have any questions about it. So you would put RUI at the beginning of your proposal title and submit it to a regular core program. There are also in this solicitation something that is usually pretty undersubscribed, which are the Research Opportunity Awards. These are supplemental funding to someone else that has an NSF award to allow faculty at primarily undergraduate institutions to work on that research project. So for example, during a summer or sabbatical. So it provides additional funding to the NSF funded principal investigators institution to allow a faculty member to initiate a collaboration, for example. So this is something that we encourage you to look into if you are at a primarily undergraduate institution. The next slide, please. Now I'm going to talk about a couple of programs that focus on people at specific career stages. The career program, Faculty Early Career Development Program, is for assistant professors or equivalent. And this is one of the most important programs to support faculty at early career stages. And the focus is on integrating research and education in the context of your job and institution, and to help develop a career trajectory for the faculty member to excel. We have a fairly new program called the Mid-Career Advancement Program. We've just had one round of competition for these so far. And this is targeted at associate professors who have been associate professors for at least 3 years and have had some kind of constraint in their research productivity or activity, such as a higher service or teaching load at the associate professor level, to help them find a collaborator and kind of jumpstart their research to develop research into the future. And so this is to advance research programs and to help broaden participation in the research endeavor. The next slide is the postdoctoral fellowships in biology. So we have supported a larger number of postdocs during the COVID pandemic, because we feel that this is an important transitional stage for people. And again, this has a deadline. And biology supports 3 different tracks or topics within the postdoctoral fellowship program: broadening participation of groups underrepresented in biology, integrative research, investigating the rules of life, and the plant genome postdoctoral research fellowships. Next slide, please. And this program, NSF Research Traineeship Program, is directed at graduate programs. So it's to develop integrative, interdisciplinary, innovative programs to train a new generation of people in interdisciplinary research. And I am one of the biology representatives to the group that oversees this program. So if people have specific questions about NRT, I will be happy to answer them later in the Q&A session. Again, this program has a deadline, and it just recently has been moved to September, and it will be September 6th each year. Next slide, please. Okay. Right. So that's an overview of a large number of programs. And now we're going to talk about proposals and funding So the next slide is an overview of preparing proposals. So the first step after having your good idea and what you want to do and fleshing out an outline of that is to identify possible programs that are appropriate for your research at NSF. So this is why I spent so much time going over programs, because that's one of the important steps. Then we really encourage you to discuss these ideas with a program director. You can contact one of us, you can send a 1 or 2 page summary of your research to us and set up a Zoom meeting or meeting to discuss the ideas to help you find the best fit for your project and discuss the ideas. The best thing to do if you don't know which program is to perhaps contact someone first. But if you have a 1-page synopsis and you plan to contact more than one program officer, please send a message to all of them at the same time so we know who you've contacted, because we then often talk to one another to try and find the best fit for your ideas before we get back to you. And we like to know who else you have contacted. It just makes it more efficient for us. And the other thing is that we program directors are sometimes very busy, sometimes have more time during the year. So if you don't hear back, please remind us, send another message and remind us that we need to get back to you. You also want to plan ahead and read the solicitations and the proposal preparation guide that NSF provides, because the solicitation contains very important information about the requirements, the limitations, the goals of the program. And the best thing is if your project fits those goals quite clearly. Then you should understand how your project, your proposal will be reviewed. And there is information about that on the NSF website in the proposal preparation guide. But also the merit review criteria that we use are the most critical criteria, the intellectual merit and broader impact. And we will talk about that in a little bit more detail in a second. But also be sure to follow the guidelines about submission in the solicitation and the guidelines in the proposal and award policies and procedure guide. And if there's conflict or contradiction between those two, the solicitation usually governs and has priority over the PAPPG, which is overall general guide. So solicitations can have more specific information for you than the PAPPG guide. The next slide, please. Okay, so first, finding program information. This is the NSF website, and you can scroll down and look at funding opportunities. You can also search for awards that have been made and search for topics that align with your idea and see what programs have funded them. Next slide, please. You can also go to the Biology Directorate webpage. And I know you can't read this, but if you look under research areas in the top menu bar, those yellow arrow points to staff. So that will give you names and contact information for specific program directors. But the red arrows point to the 4 directorates of biology, and you can see molecular and cellular biosciences is here in this window. You can go to the specific website for each division and then each cluster within that division, and there's a description of the program, and you can see which one aligns with your ideas to get a focus on who you should be contacting. Next slide. Okay. So the merit review criteria are intellectual merit, the potential to advance knowledge, and broader impact, the potential to benefit society and contribute to the achievement of specific desired societal outcomes. So your proposal should address both of these criteria quite clearly and should include clearly stated goals, specific descriptions of the activities you plan to carry out to meet those specific goals, and how you will document the outcomes. How will you know that you've been successful? Next slide, please. So to help identify strategies for success, you want to know who your audience is. So again, you want to know who will be, not who specifically will be reviewing, but the ad hoc reviewers, as I mentioned, are experts in the field. And we ask that PIs provide suggested reviewers when you have the opportunity to suggest reviewers for your proposal when you submit your proposal. That's very helpful to us. We also will identify experts to have the proposals reviewed. And then also the panel review will be conducted. And as I mentioned briefly, the panelists are often more generalist, and they're going to be focused on the bigger picture and, why is this an important topic? What's the important gap in knowledge that your proposal is filling? You want to frame a big picture. What is the basic biological principle being studied? How is what you're going to learn going to be more widely applicable to other systems or other organisms, for example? Identify the gaps in knowledge and how you will fill those gaps. Emphasize the new innovative contributions that your research will be making. If possible, provide proof of concept. So for intellectual merit, this usually means preliminary data or familiarity and experience with the techniques that you're going to be using. And you can talk about alternatives if things do not work, for example. So what will you do if this method that you're trying doesn't work? Do you have a backup plan? Proof of concept for broader impacts is often experience in a given activity that you're planning to do. For example, if you are planning to develop some teaching materials for K through 12 classrooms, do you have a connection with a classroom? Do you know what the needs are for that classroom? And have you made the connections? That would help with proof of concept ideas in some ways for showing that you have identified a need in the classroom and that your work as a broader impact is going to help fill that need. Describe your expected outcomes and how you're going to assess whether you meet those outcomes, and relate everything back to the big picture of what you're going to do. Also, I can say here that you want to ensure that the experimental design that you lay out matches your goals, the goals of the research and the broader impacts, and that your budget also mirrors that and your budget justification ties in. So it's a whole package that's internally consistent. Next slide. And this is a little synopsis of the proposal submission process. So you have an idea, you may collect some preliminary data to help support the hypothesis that you propose. And at that point, you can talk to a program director or send us a synopsis of your project and your planned ideas and talk to us. Then you will develop that into a full proposal following the solicitation and the proposal guide and submit it. And you'll submit it through research.gov or Fastlane. What the solicitations usually say which method you can use to submit the proposal. And you will do this through your grants office. And then you will wait, because we will then initiate the review process. So it will go into merit review as described. And then you will receive information, either a call from a program officer that we intend to recommend your project for an award, or you will receive a recommendation for a decline. And we have more declines than awards, so often we have declines. You will also have access to the reviews and a panel summary if your project was reviewed at a panel. And this provides hopefully very constructive feedback to you that you will then talk to a program director about and help you develop the ideas further to refine your proposal, and then submit another proposal and come into this circle again and hopefully be successful. The next slide, please. Okay. So lastly, how do you reach us to contact us? So in the next slide, we have some ways to do this. So you can sign up to receive blogs from the Bio Directorate, the Bio Buzz, that figure shown here, but each of the 4 divisions have their own blogs, which are listed here, and there are links to them. You can subscribe to NSF alerts, and you can refine what information you receive, but you can sign up, for example, to receive new solicitations as they become available to the public. And this is very useful to see the directions that NSF is going and to know what is happening at NSF and new directions, new solicitations, some of the new programs that I mentioned. We also have Facebook and Twitter feeds, so you can follow us on social media. And next slide, we also have been doing virtual office hours, and each division in Bio does these once per month on a different day. And these sessions usually have a topic that's publicized ahead of time in the blog. And they can be about new and ongoing funding opportunities, specific programs that have deadlines coming up. And they always have an open period for questions from the audience. And we have program directors from all of the clusters when we do them in iOS, and this is true for the other divisions. So if you have specific programs directed at a specific program or cluster within the division, you should be able to get those questions answered, or at least be directed to someone who can answer them for you. And again, sign up for the Bio blogs, because this is where we announce the virtual office hours. Next slide. Another thing is that we're always in need of people to volunteer or work at NSF. So we always are looking for reviewers, for people to serve on panels. If you're interested in this, you can send CVs to the appropriate program and talk to the program director. NSF has a program of rotating program directors and other positions that are temporary, that we pull people in from academia and other institutions to serve 1 to 3 years usually. And this is really, really excellent for both NSF and the individuals doing this, because you learn a lot about how NSF works, and we get an infusion of new ideas and excitement. We have science assistant positions, which are administrative staff positions that help do all sorts of things with regard to panels and PI meetings and so forth. Science advisors, division directors, all of these positions are advertised as they're open, and we really encourage you to talk to us about any interests you might have in serving NSF. Okay, and next slide, I believe, is the last slide. So this is my name and my contact information, my NSF email. If you have questions, you can contact me there at any time, and I can help direct your question to the right person. And now we will go into the question and answer period to address your individual questions today. Thank you very much.
Okay, welcome back. And we have about 15 minutes left for questions. So Kathy's been able to go ahead and mark some of the ones that she would like to answer. And I will go ahead and just kind of, Kathy, start going down the list. So the first question is, how do we note whether we're applying to a particular track? I'm guessing of a solicitation or a DCL or a particular track within a core program. I guess some of this might require some definitions.
Okay, thank you for that question, Mark. Usually in the DCLs, the Dear Colleague letters, it indicates that you should start the title with a specific word or acronym. And so it's usually embedded in the Dear Colleague letter. In terms of the tracks, sometimes they also have the same indication that you put it in your title, but it's also a good idea, if that's not indicated, you could just write a line in the beginning of the project description. So that's within a given solicitation.
I'll also mention that Dear Colleague letters will typically point you to existing funding opportunities, right? So we're not soliciting proposals directly to a Dear Colleague letter. Rather, we're calling your attention to existing competitions, or they may be announcements that will identify supplemental funding opportunities to those of you who may already have awards with NSF and announce a specific supplemental funding opportunity. Next question, would iOS consider more than 2 months PI salary for PI who is research faculty and on soft money?
Yes, thank you, Jeremy, for clarifying the first answer, and Eleni for this question. It really depends upon the program. So for this question, it's a good idea to specifically ask the program director to the program that you are applying to. Generally speaking, it's not faculty who are not on a typical academic year salary support can be considered for more than 2 months of summer salary, as long as that is very well justified. But there are some programs that generally do or do not support that kind of additional cost just based on their overall budget and the policies within the program itself. So there's no specific, there's really no overall applicable answer to that question because it's very program specific.
Okay. Next question is would it be perceived as more favorable to have collaborative proposals that are with U.S. institutions versus international collaborations?
Thanks, Rachel. That I wouldn't use the word favorable in describing this. So really, you want to think about what are the goals of the project and who are the best people to pull in to help work on that to achieve the goals and advance the science. So for U.S. institutions, it's not a problem for NSF money to go to U.S. institutions. There are caveats if the request is for funding to go to foreign institutions. There has to be additional justification. NSF, as a general rule, does not usually support investigators from foreign institutions, but there are exceptions. And if the OISE, the International Directorate at NSF, often has some specific programs established that are collaborations with other countries. And so that's a different way of getting international collaboration. So it really depends on the country, the project, and the program. So again, this is a very good question to be asking to the specific program officers in the program that you would be applying to.
Okay, the next question is following up on the building research capacity of new faculty in bio program. And the question is, what would be considered a new PI to be eligible for this in this program solicitation? And what would permit a PUI, primarily undergraduate institution, to be eligible?
Yes, I'm sorry that I will not have the answer to this question. This is a brand new solicitation and program. And I know very little about it during the recording. I tried to look it up and the solicitation does not pop up. So I think it's because it hasn't been widely published yet, or they're making last minute revisions. Normally, those exact questions would be answered in the solicitation. The eligibility criteria would be spelled out very clearly. The paragraph I did read didn't call this new investigators, which does have a specific definition at NSF. So I think either wait until the solicitation itself is available online, or try to find out what program officer in the Division of Biological Infrastructure in Biology is responsible for this program and ask those specific program officers.
Yeah, Kathy, I can add a little bit to this because you're right. It is very new. In fact, I just cleared this solicitation yesterday, which might be the reason why it's not yet showing up on the NSF website. But what I can say is that what the solicitation does say is that PIs must be at the assistant professor rank or equivalent with no more than 3 years, with service at that rank for no more than 3 years by the proposal submission date. And there are other eligibility requirements for the institutions as well. So that should be, I would imagine, by the end of today or tomorrow, you'll be able to find that solicitation on our website.
Do you want to go down to Suzanne Lee's question, which is also about that new program?
Oh, sure. So her question is, how does this new mechanism differ from the research at undergraduate institutions program? Was that the one that you were?
Yes, and I don't know the exact answer to that question either. I was going to also refer to the solicitation when it's live on the website, but there are different goals of these two different programs. And I think that the new BRC Bio program is targeted specifically at faculty at several different types of institutions, one of which is RUI. And so the requirements of what you would submit may be slightly different for this new program than it would be if you submitted to a core solicitation with the RUI designation. So I don't know, okay. Jeremy, you might have more information on how.
No, I think, no, I wouldn't have, I'd have to go read the solicitation a little bit more carefully again. So I wouldn't want to do that right here, but you'll be able to go and look at those solicitations and make those comparisons. And one of the things you want to really focus on in these are the eligibility requirements, because they deviate quite substantially from the eligibility requirements that are in the proposal and award policies and procedures guide. So that's something to focus on when you look at those solicitations. The next question I have here from Thomas DeWitt was, how is dual review supposed to work in terms of proposals that are being reviewed, perhaps both in two different biological sciences directorate divisions?
Right. Okay, thank you, Thomas, for that question, because it brings up a topic of co-reviewing, which is a special topic. So when you submit a proposal, you submit it to a specific program, and program officers then will review it. And our main goal is to decide how to give these proposals the best, most fair and comprehensive review possible, to provide feedback and for the PIs and for us, and to help evaluate the proposals. And so often, especially with collaborative proposals or integrative proposals, there is overlap between the goals of different programs. And so the program officers will consult and sometimes decide to co-review a proposal with another program, which may or may not be in a different division or even a different directorate. So when we do that, our goal is to get more and better feedback and input on the merits of the proposal. So the way these are handled varies on a case-by-case basis completely. And so to answer Thomas's very specific question, this is not uncommon as a way for proposals to be co-reviewed within biology. It depends on the relative timing of the two panels, and it also depends upon how much of the proposal overlaps with a given program. So I would be happy to talk to you specifically, through an email afterwards if you had specific questions about your case. I wanted to answer it in a more general case for the audience. And then, Jeremy, you skipped a couple when we went down to that other BRC one, so I just wanted to let you know that.
Sorry. So there are some questions I see here about career funding. I don't know if you want to answer those questions. So this is specific to the career program, but it's are non-tenure track faculty like lecturers able to apply for career funding?
Yes, thank you. The solicitation specifies the criteria, and the faculty applying must be in an assistant professor or equivalent rank. And so it's up to the institution to determine equivalency and to document that. And there is a required letter from a department chair or dean that must indicate the eligibility of the individual applying as the PI. So I would say typically that a non-tenure track faculty member may not be eligible, but it would depend on those specific criteria. Jeremy might want to add something.
No, I don't have anything else to add on that one.
Okay.
Kelly Holtzworth is asking if bio still requires the proposal classification form.
No longer is that required. So you can just put that out of your minds.
Right. And
it's created some problems, I know.
She notes that she didn't see it in research.gov, and that's correct. It did not get built into research.gov. And actually, the bio directorate has been like the first directorate to really start requiring a lot of programs use research.gov for proposal submission. So one of the things to check on that is looking at the solicitation, because it will come up as to where you should be submitting your proposal, either through research.gov only or research.gov, FastLane, and grants.gov. But that will all be spelled out in the solicitation. We are pulling up on the top of the hour, and so I realize we won't get to all of your questions today, but I do want to thank you all for joining us today. I want to thank Kathy for joining us today. Thank you very much. And this afternoon, there will be 2 more sessions that cover the programs in the Directorates for Education and Human Resources and Computer Information Science and Engineering. Thank you all for your participation, and be well, everybody.